Hi guys, you are on Reflections with Joi-Zulema, and I would like to introduce my guest here, Joan Carroll-Flowers, who also happens to be my mother. Hi, Mom.
Hi, daughter.
So we are here today talking about uh, moving on from divorce. Many of my friends, family, and Facebook friends know that I recently went through a divorce. It's been over a year, and I went through about halfway and did a little bit of a video on TikTok just to talk about where I was then. And now we're going to talk about where I am now. My dear mother and guest today, Joan, is going to tell us a little bit about her experiences as well. It's going to be very informal. We have our wine.
Here, here.
We have our each other, and we're going to have a good time. We're going to be very real, and we are going to open up for questions for people who are on, and we'll be able to, hopefully give some insight for people who are possibly going through what we went through.
And,
Yes.
and I've been through it several times. So.
We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so the first thing that is on the topics for this, or the subjects for this topic, is losing yourself in a marriage. I know I'll speak for myself. One of the things that I went through, I had been married for for over 23 years, and got to a point when the kids came, and you're doing everything in the household, managing the household. I was running kids' schedules and helping my ex at the time. He was my husband, doing so many things for his career and jobs, and washing clothes, cooking, and just managing everything to the point where I literally did not do any self care and could see myself literally deteriorating. I mean, my health began to suffer. My mental health was suffering. It was just, I did not take care of me at all. So, before I get into how I was able to overcome that, I would like to talk to you about your experience in
Well,
losing yourself.
I, I didn't even know myself when I first got married. I was 4 months from my 18th birthday, and we were both very young. And I think that what happens in an experience like that, you're not mature. Number one, I was probably 18, going on 14. Um, you're not you have no idea what a marriage really is, and you don't know somebody until you live with them too. This is somebody I grew up with, right? Thought I knew him, but things change. People change. There are experiences that you go through in life that you're not prepared for. He had a lot of death in his family. The first few years we were married, he lost a brother in Vietnam, and so those things take its toll on not only on the marriage. Are we still there?
Yeah, keep going.
Not only on the marriage, but they take its toll on you as individuals too. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, there's a grieving process. He had an uncle that died at his brother's funeral. He was very close to that uncle. And so he changed. And in him changing, I didn't know what to do because I was young, totally lost. And so the marriage fell apart, right? Unfortunately, right? We had one child, right? Um, I had to start looking at how I could build a career to start to take care of myself.
Well, before you get to that, let's talk about how you feel that you actually lost yourself.
I didn't even know myself. I mean, I was a
Okay.
kid when I got married, right? And you have these illusions about how you think marriage is going to be.
Right,
The Ozzie and Harriet and all the stuff you see on television that wasn't my parents' reality. But you're young and you have dreams and you think it's going to be what it is not.
Mm.
And when you're older and more mature, you can make it what you want it to be. You know, it takes two people to make a marriage. It takes two people to break up a marriage
Right.
too, right?
Well, I don't
So,
know about that one, but we'll get back to
well,
that in a minute.
but it does, right? And we can talk about that, right? But what I wanted a career. I didn't. His mother had a lot of children and was a housewife, and I didn't want a lot of children and be a housewife. That was not. I didn't want to be like my mother. You know, I wanted to be out in the world and have a career.
Now, did you know that before you got married?
No.
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
didn't know that. You know, you get married and you know he wants you. Well, I don't want any kids right now.
Okay.
I want a career.
Mhm.
I want to work in the New York City. And no, we can't. You can't do that. What? So there was conflict from the beginning.
Right, right.
We both didn't even want the same things, but you don't know that. You're kids. You're young people. You
Mhm,
know. Of course, he was a little older than me. But you know, I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
And my
How
mother,
old were you? Let our audience know how old you
I
were.
was 18,
Okay.
and I had only been 18 for 4 months. I hadn't even voted yet, right? And you just you have to have experience. I tell young people all the time, you have to have experiences. And I think we were married about 6 months, and I got pregnant. I didn't even know how not to get pregnant, right? So you know, it was an experience, but life is an experience, and you learn to cope as you go through these different seasons. That was a young season in my life, and I didn't go to college. I didn't, you know, I didn't do any of those things that I should have done. Right?
Now, when we talk about losing yourself in a marriage, that is a problem. What did you learn for your next marriage as far as self-care? Because I am not dating really. I'm not um in a relationship. I had the interest high, but um not dating, but learning yourself and learning who you are and doing that, like I said, self-care. I journal, I have a therapist, I take care of my body, I exercise, I do things to take care of myself so that when I am ready and that happens, I know that I won't lose myself again, in a relationship, because I'll be strong enough to know who I am.
Well,
So what did you
you're
do?
also older as you got divorced.
Right, right.
There's a big difference in getting divorced when you're 22 and you're just starting to experience the world, and then I jump right back into another relationship.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, it happened fast, and I was kind of I was in awe because I had never had that experience. I had never dated. I had never been out with different men or anything like that, and I jumped right back into another relationship that was a disaster. But I had you. That was the good part.
Yeah.
And in the first relationship, I had Charlene, my other daughter, which was the good part. So even though we go through these experiences, there's good and bad in everything, and it all depends on how you look at the situation, right? There are some circumstances we can't change, but there's some circumstances that we can. Some things we can do something about. Right?
Okay, so did you do any self-care before you got into that next relationship?
No, didn't have time.
Okay.
Got into it. I mean, pretty much within about 5 months.
Did you recognize that after you got into it? And we'll
Um,
talk about how that one ended, but
Well, let's just say that I got into that relationship because I was kind of afraid of the world. I was still young. I was 22. By that time, I was 22 going on 16, right? Or 17. I didn't know anything, right? And so I'm out there thrust into the world, right? And had to really had to learn about life, and I still didn't know about life after 18 years of being married. The second time around, I still didn't really know anything about life, and I hadn't experienced anything. I mean, I had a career. That was the part that I liked, right? I had a career that I loved, and I spent 22 years in that career, so that was good. like I said, there's good and bad in everything. You
Right.
know, I try not to look at the bad and try to look at the good. And sometimes, we can look at life through rosy-colored glasses and and not be dealing with reality too. Uh,
So, what would you suggest? Because we're still talking about losing
Losing it.
yourself in their marriage, and then wait a minute, and
Okay.
then wanting to do some type of self care. How do you suggest, and what would you advise people that are in the process of getting a divorce, don't know what to do, lost, waking up, not sure how to, feel, how to function? How do they begin to take care of themselves?
Well, I think that what you need to do is sit down and think about what you want for the rest of your life. And I don't think that this is any different for somebody who gets divorced as opposed to somebody who loses a husband. Some people can be married, 40 years, 50 years, and all of a sudden they're in their 60s and 70s and they're in the same situation that we're in when we get divorced.
You mean
They have
passed away?
yeah,
Oh,
somebody
okay.
the husband or the wife passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and they are totally lost, just like people who get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find, when I talk to friends that are going through that, I don't find anything different, except they're older going through it as opposed to a lot of people go through it when they're younger, you know.
Yeah.
So if I were to advise somebody, I would say take your time to find out what you want to do. What is your purpose in life?
There you go.
Because if you're living life and you don't have a purpose, you're going to be lost for the rest of your life, right? So you have to find out what your purpose is. I had all those years and experience that I had spent in the advertising industry. And then all of a sudden there I am, and I'm divorced, and the second time around. And okay, what do I do now? What do I do next? I have to provide for myself. I have to provide for my children. What do I do next? So I decided to become an entrepreneur. That was my second career.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, what I would advise women that may be going through what we're going through is to be able to, like she said, find yourself, find your purpose. Go seek some help if you need to talk to somebody. Everybody may need that, a therapist, someone to talk to, a pastor, um, finding support group. I know it helps me. I'm in a support group usually tonight at 7. Um, and that group has been phenomenal in helping me get to my next level of healing. I also do Bible studies on Tuesday night um, with my church, and I'm a spiritual person, so that grounds me as well. Having that spiritual foundation keeps my hope in God. Um, so those types of things are necessary to be able to kind of heal and to start finding who you are. I also returned to school. I mean, I dropped out of school in my 30s. I don't know. I've been in school for
oh
so
no,
long.
you dropped out of school before that, right after
Um,
you got married.
yeah, I
Really?
did. So when I got married, and I was like a senior, and I didn't have much more to go, and then the kids came, and so my dreams were way on the back burner while I supported everybody else in what they needed to do, and wanted to do. So after the divorce, when I began to think, what is it that I really want to do, enrolled myself back in school because that was a goal that I wanted to do for myself. And I would even encourage women, take this time, further your education. Those courses, even if you don't know exactly what it is you want to do, just enroll in some stuff where, it will help you critically think, you know.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be college either. It could be, I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
if you like doing hair or something like that,
Yeah.
there's beauty school. If you like doing nails, I mean, there are so many alternatives, right? Now, I didn't go back. I never even started. I never had a chance to start, but I had a very successful career in advertising. Then I became an entrepreneur. But one of the things that I found that helped me, through all of my little divorces, right? I wrote books. I wrote more books, and I published books, self-publishing them, and was successful at it. Now I haven't been doing it lately. I haven't been doing it for the past what, probably 15, probably 10 years, right? Because I got married again, and I've been married this time for 22 years. So, I finally got success. But I mean, there are so many ways to have an outlet while you're going through that grieving process, because everybody goes through that grief. What did I do? That's the first thing you think of, that you had to do something. Well, no, I never did anything wrong. I thought I did everything right, but
Right.
it
And
still happened.
We all go through that.
It
I
still
know that
happened,
when my ex and I divorced, it was like, oh my God, after 23 years, you think I'm doing everything you called me to do, God, and it ends like this?
Right.
You're the shock of it all.
Yeah, there is a shock there.
Yeah,
I
that
was
goes
18
into our.
years, and that
Yeah.
was a big shock.
Yeah.
And then and beware of the lies that men tell, because
We're sorry, man. We're not trying to mail bash.
what happened the next time around is here comes this guy with the roses and the, oh my gosh, and I was so overwhelmed and so.
Are we talking about 3?
We're on number 3 now.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
I was so overwhelmed and so excited, and and oh my gosh, and it didn't last very long. That's why I said take your time to know somebody, because everybody that is smiling and bringing roses and putting a diamond on your finger isn't necessarily the right person for you, right?
If you wait.
Well, you wait, you have to wait, right? So anyway.
Well, that kind of moves us into our next subtopic here, getting over the shock and starting over.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
starting over
you
is
start that
difficult.
one off.
Starting over is difficult. It's frightening, in fact. I was terrified the first time around. I mean, I had a career, but I had just started my career in advertising, and I mean, I was really terrified because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going to live. I had no idea. When it was over, and that was it, right? And you go through the shock, and then you realize that, hey, life goes on. This is just a period in my life that I've got to get through this season. And I say get through it because that's exactly what happens. You're going through it. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, even though you feel like you're in the dark. You do get through it. There's the grieving process you go through, and then you get angry. And after you get angry, you realize, hey, this is reality. This is what it is. I have to just move on. I can't spend my time being angry over something that ended or trying to answer why it ended or any of that. It is over. And you just deal with the reality that it's over and you have to move on, right? So that's the way I have gone through it. And I have friends that have gotten stuck in it, and they stayed stuck in it. And they're so angry with that man, they don't know what to do. And then they are so miserable, right? And I was just determined to have peace in my life. I wasn't going to go through all of that. I never asked anybody to take care of my kids. I take care of my own kids. I'm not taking you to court for some money. Oh, no. I'm taking care of my own kid. And if you don't want to take care of your child, then, so be it. That's your loss, right? And
Well, for
that's
me,
my attitude.
I think that the shock, well, it was just a very traumatic ending. I mean, you know that.
I do know that.
When you're dealing with the infidelity and you find out all of this stuff toward the end, I had to make a decision. Am I going to stay and continue to deal with the infidelity, or am I going to move on? So, making the decision that God's best is not this. This is not what God wants.
No, never.
So I was like, I felt so bad about who I was. I didn't feel like I deserved more than what I was getting. And when God told me, I will take care of you, I didn't have a job, I didn't have anything. And to get an apartment, find a job, take care of my son, it was all new and fresh. And mind you, I had been a housewife depending on my ex for years.
A lot of years.
Years. And so
Right.
to not really have a steady job, I had part time jobs just to bring something in, but like a real job, uh, hadn't had one in a long time. So it was very scary to be able to step out on my own without the support anymore. And um, starting over was just a fear. I had such a fear of, I'm 40 at the time. I was 46, so um, I'm now 47, and starting over at 46 is like, what in the world? You know, it was
And
it
then
was
people that go
scary. It
through,
was
then people
scary.
that, I think it's scary no matter what age you are.
True.
I was 22, and I'm like, I didn't even feel I was starting over. I feel like I was just getting started, going
Yeah.
out the gate, right? But then the next time around, it was a whole different experience, right? But I mean, we managed to survive as women. Women are very strong. Men, I find, have a much harder time going through a divorce than women do.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Well, I've known men, and I've known men who have gone, and they're just so afraid to get in another relationship, and I mean, they're terrified. And I think one of the reasons is because they don't realize, and a lot of times they get a divorce, and the grass looks greener. And then when they get over there in that grass, they find it's brown. It's really not green. And they want to turn around and they want to come back. And it's like, I've got my freedom now. I'm not going through all of that again.
Yeah.
And that's, and then they don't really know what to do. They're totally lost, right?
Now, when you say that they think the green is grass,
The grass,
the grass
is
is greener on the other side. Explain that. Why do you think men go there?
I think what happens with men, and the men that I've talked to that have done that and regretted it, but I think what happens is they have this thing called midlife crisis. I think that's really real. And they've been married 10 years, 15 years, and they see their friends out there that are single, or some of them married, and they're going and doing whatever they want to do, and they don't have to answer to anybody and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I say. The grass is greener, but then when they get over there, they find out it's not so green. And in a situation like that, it's really hard for a man to get in another relationship. Especially if they're trying in their same town where all the word got out what they did.
Yeah, yeah. And where we live is kind of small. I don't know about here, but in Ohio.
I don't think it's any different anywhere.
Yeah.
People get on Facebook and, oh boy, guess who I saw last night at the karaoke with what? Does his wife know? No, but she reads Facebook.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you're right. I do believe, we have our menopause. They have their midlife.
They have their male menopause.
Yeah, right. My poem. So I think you hit something there. I do believe that men actually do go through that. If you could, let's see here. Let's talk about steps to heal.
Okay, let's talk about steps.
No, actually, I want to go. Let's go back because you talked about number 3. Let's talk about what growth did you go from number 3 to 4?
Well, number 4 was a great guy. He just had a lot of issues.
Well, they all got the issues.
Yeah, and there were things that I just didn't want to deal with, right?
Mm-hmm. Where do you feel like you've learned the lesson? What do you feel like the lessons were?
Oh, I spent
4.
Okay, I spent 10 years single after number 4. I was never gonna get married again. I I said, I am not, and I love marriage, but I just made up my mind, I'm not doing this again.
Mm-hmm.
I learned to say no. Somebody comes at me with a ring, no, right? And then 10 years later, somebody came at me with a ring.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the right person. I've been married 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
He was the right person, But you have to mature and understand what it is that you expect in a spouse.
Right.
I never did that.
Mm-hmm. I don't
You
think I
coming
did
along and you coming with roses and you coming with rings and all this stuff. Put a ring on it. And I said, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and those were mistakes. Those were mistakes, right? And I can't blame the other person because they were who they were.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't know it, right? So you kind of have to get to know people, right? My advice to young people is do not get married if you are 25 or under. Do not get married. You don't even know yourself, let alone somebody else.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I was 24, so I guess I could piggyback on
don't
that.
do that. My other daughter was what?
But
29
there
when
are
she got
people
married.
that graduate from college and they're 24, they're 25, and they're still married. So I'm not sure
and they
we can
have
put
gone,
an age on
and
it
they
either.
have probably gone through all kinds of stuff and decided to stay married. There are a lot of people that stayed married, and the woman I'll use my parents as an example. My parents were married 63 years. When my parents had their 50th wedding anniversary, I wanted to give them this huge big anniversary party. And my mother said to me, "What makes you think I would ever do this again?" So
You
that
mean
was the end of
anniversary
that.
party or
An anniversary
vow
and
renewal?
renew their
Okay.
vow. And she said, "What man?" And then when they were married, I think 63 years, and my father was very, very ill, and I wanted them to renew it again. She said, "I told you at 50 years I wouldn't do this again," right? And they had their ups and downs, but they stayed together. But was there happiness there? I think my mother found her happiness in her children. My father was always gone.
Yeah.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
He never went to a baseball game. He was just gone all the time.
I think that's what my children saw our issue as, because he was gone doing what he did. And they were my life. They became my everything. They became,
Right.
I was the soccer mom. I was the classroom mom. Dinner was done when he got home. He changed his
That was
clothes
my
and he's
mom.
out the door.
Right. That was my mom.
But I think the lesson that I learned in that was, first, love yourself.
Love yourself. Yes.
Second, don't settle.
Don't settle.
Mm-hmm.
Big capital red letters. Don't settle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Know what you want and don't settle for anything less.
Right.
And if that man is not willing to do that, don't marry him. He can be
RJ.
He can be your boyfriend. He can be your hey, long-term relationship, whatever. But when you start to live together, things are changed.
Yeah.
They really do.
You don't know anybody
You
till
don't
you live with
know anybody until you live with them. Now my current husband had never been married before, so that was a new experience for him. So being a bachelor all those years, he was 54 when we got married. Being a bachelor all those years and everything, and I said, you're not doing that. If you want to run the street, don't get married. If you want to be out there with your guy friends, don't get married. That's not what marriage is all about. And he's a wonderful husband. He learned how to be married because I wasn't settling for anything less. And then he said to me when we got engaged, he said, "I want you to understand, divorce is not an option." And my mother loved him.
Yes. I would like, you ever seen that movie, The Runaway Bride?
I think so.
That's who you remind me of, Mom. Okay, so we have a lot of people. I do want to take some questions. If you have any, go ahead and type them in the chat. I would love to acknowledge, hi Diesa, how are you? Stephanie, hi sis. Sheila, my girl Shonda.
Hi, Shonda.
Yay! Jonathan Dobbins is on.
Hi, Jonathan.
Rodney is on. If I'm not, if I've missed you, forgive me. So we're just, yeah, we're just.
You have a
I'm
lot of
looking to
people
see.
on there.
Yes, we do. So if you have a question, feel free to type it in there. We'll get to it as soon as we can. We want to thank you guys for watching. We're going to do this a little bit often. I also have a podcast that I'm working on. As soon as I get that information available to you guys, I will get that to you. I really enjoyed talking with you about
I did
this.
too.
Yes,
Right?
and
I hope it's been a learning experience from what we're sharing of
yes,
our experiences. We're hoping that somebody got something out of it that was constructive.
yes. So don't settle. Love yourself.
That's right.
Do that self-care that you need. And then also, if you need help, you know, in the beginning of the divorce that I went through, because of the shock of how it all happened, I had to reach out. And I really encourage people to take care of their mental health. If you have to reach out and talk to somebody, like I said, a pastor, a therapist, counselor, some friends, a support group, find those resources and utilize them, because you don't want to get stuck, like she said, in a depression and not be able to move on. So
Right.
that's very important. So we want to make sure that we touch on that point. And any other thing you want to recap?
No, I through all of my experiences, I always had a lot of male friends, and when I say friends, that's what I mean, just friends, right? And they were very helpful in helping me understand why men do the things that they do, right? So I have to say, I've had a very fruitful, wonderful life, and I've had a lot of friends, that have helped me through, that have been there for me through the years. And hi, Pat, if you're on. So that's it.
And I want to give a special shout out to my girl Shonda. She said you got to have a best friend. So, and Lord
helps to have a
knows I
best friend.
burned her phone up calling her, going through when I first got separated. I mean, burned her ears up on the phone, and she's all the way in Atlanta. So, shout out to my girl Shonda. Love you, love you. So, thank you so much for being
You're
my
welcome.
first guest on Reflections with Joi-Zulema.
Hey, this has been very enlightening. I'd love to come back sometime.
We will definitely have you back.
Thank
Definitely.
you. Thank you.
And what would you like to talk about when you come back?
Oh, there's so many subjects I'd like to talk about.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely have you back.
One of the things that I would love to talk about is grief, because
Okay.
I've been there with a lot of people, an awful lot of people that have, we've had this COVID crisis, and a lot of people have lost loved ones, young and old, right? And of course, I lost my son-in-law, and I've lost 2 stepsons. So I think grief would be a topic that a lot of people are going through, and how do you get through it? How do you get over it?
That's definitely one that we'll definitely talk about, and I'll
Yeah.
invite you back for that.
Thank
That's
you.
something that we can definitely talk about.
Thank you.
And then even this grief, divorce,
Divorce
you're going
is
through
good. There's so
grief.
many different types of grief.
Right?
There
Because
really
it's a
are.
loss. It's a
Yeah,
loss,
it's
and
a
you
loss.
do grieve.
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
and
It's
you
a
have to go
loss.
through it healthily, so that hopefully that helps some people today. Listen, thank you so much for joining Reflections. We will be back soon. I will get you all the information about my podcast, and I'll keep you up to date on my Facebook Lives. Thank you for joining us. Love you all. Come back again.
All right.
Bye.